He stood there in the pouring rain, his trembling hands clutching a brown paper box filled with his last belongings, an old photo of his son, a coffee mug, and a folded janitor's uniform still damp from his final shift. The neon lights of the towering skyscraper flickered above him, spelling out the name of the billion-dollar empire that had just crushed him, Everhart Industries. Inside that building, his life had been swept away in a single moment of misunderstanding. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that good people still deserve miracles, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story might just remind us all that humanity isn't lost. Jacob Miller wasn't the kind of man people noticed. He was the invisible one in the hallways, the janitor who cleaned up after the meetings, who arrived before dawn and left long after everyone else. Life hadn't been kind to him. His wife, Amanda, had passed away 5 years ago in a car accident that left their little boy, Liam, clinging to life. Doctors had said Liam might never walk again, but Jacob refused to give up. He worked 3 jobs, took night shifts, skipped meals, and still found a way to smile every morning when Liam woke up. Every dollar he earned went into physical therapy, every prayer he whispered was for his boy's healing. But the world didn't care about tired fathers and their silent sacrifices, not until destiny put him face to face with the most powerful woman in the city. Isabella Everhart, the billionaire CEO of Everhart Industries, was known for her icy perfection. Her wealth was legendary, her presence intimidating, and her reputation ruthless. But beneath all that power was a mother, and though few knew it, her world revolved around her only daughter, Emma. She'd built her empire to protect that little girl from the pain she'd known as a child: poverty, loss, fear. Her rules were absolute, her staff terrified to disobey. And that's how Jacob found himself fired. One misunderstanding, one moment of bad timing. It happened on a Thursday morning when chaos erupted on the 40th floor. Emma Everhart had gone missing. The little girl had slipped past her nanny during a corporate event, curious and restless, and no one could find her. Security guards panicked, executives whispered in fear, and Isabella's cold voice echoed through the building like a storm. Then, as sirens wailed outside, Jacob appeared, drenched in sweat, carrying the little girl in his arms. He'd found her at the edge of the parking garage rooftop, frozen, terrified, too close to the railing. He'd dropped his mop, sprinted, and caught her before disaster struck, but by the time Isabella saw him, all she saw was a janitor holding her crying daughter. She never heard his explanation, only saw what her pride assumed: a strange man with her child. Security escorted him out, his job terminated before he could say a word. The rumors spread fast, that he'd broken protocol, that he'd endangered the CEO's daughter. And just like that, Jacob Miller, a man who had given everything to survive, was destroyed by the world's cold judgment. He went home that night to his small, dimly lit apartment. Liam sat on the couch, a blanket over his legs, asking if his dad was okay. Jacob smiled, lied through his tears, and said everything was fine. But when Liam fell asleep, Jacob sat by the window, staring out at the city that had turned its back on him. He whispered to the night, "How much more can I take?" His hands shook as he opened the envelope containing his last paycheck, barely enough for rent. His heart felt heavy, but his love for his son kept him standing. Days passed. Weeks. Then one morning, the knock came. A luxury car idled outside their building, and 2 men in suits stood at his door. "Mr. Miller," one said, "Ms. Everhart requests your presence." Confused and nervous, Jacob followed them back to the same skyscraper he'd been thrown out of. When he stepped inside, everyone went silent. The same people who'd ignored him now watched him like he didn't belong, again. But this time, Isabella Everhart was waiting. Not with anger. Not with pride. But with tears. The night before, her daughter Emma had refused to sleep. She'd been clutching a small drawing she'd made, a picture of a man with kind eyes, holding her hand near the rooftop. "Mommy," she whispered, "that's the man who saved my life." Isabella froze. She realized then the truth, that the janitor she had fired was the man who had risked everything for her child. Guilt tore through her heart like glass. She spent the entire night tracking him down. And now, standing before him, the powerful CEO who'd never said sorry to anyone in her life did something no one could have imagined. She knelt, she told him she was sorry. She told him her daughter wouldn't be alive if not for him. The room was silent except for the sound of Emma's little footsteps as she ran up and hugged Jacob's leg, whispering again, "You saved my life." And for the first time in years, Jacob felt his heart break and heal at once. He didn't want money, he didn't want revenge, he just wanted to go home and tell his son that good still existed in the world. But Isabella wouldn't let him leave empty-handed. She offered him his job back, and not just as a janitor. She had learned he was once an engineer before life had knocked him down, before his wife's death forced him into survival mode. She gave him a chance to start over, offering him a position that matched his skills, his dignity, and his worth. Weeks later, Jacob was standing in his new office, looking out over the same city that had once made him feel small. Liam visited often, walking now with only a slight limp, smiling with pride every time he saw his father's nameplate on the desk. And Isabella? She changed too. She started greeting her staff by name. She made sure her company offered scholarships, health benefits, and second chances to people like Jacob, the ones who were invisible, the ones who worked in silence, the ones who carried the world on their backs without anyone noticing. The empire she built with power was now guided by compassion. Years later, when Emma graduated from college, she gave a speech about the man who saved her life and changed her mother's heart. She said, "Kindness doesn't come from wealth or titles, it comes from courage, from love, and from seeing the humanity in others." And sitting in the front row, Jacob smiled, his eyes glistening with tears, knowing that his pain had become someone else's lesson, his story a light for others. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Help us spread this message of hope, kindness, and redemption. Before we end, tell us in the comments, have you ever been judged unfairly but still chosen to do the right thing? Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear that goodness still exists, because sometimes, it takes the brokenhearted to remind the powerful that humanity is the greatest wealth of all.